Okay, we're going to talk about Kadee couplers, Kadee Uncoupling, operations of magnets with Kadees. Show you how to try to save some wear and tear on your cars and make them more effective during an operating session. Can't get into all the depth of Kadee couplers. Believe me, it would take hours of videos to do it. So this will be a focus primarily on Kadee coupler devices and magnets for operating purposes. So start this discussion off with basically the two basic Kadee couplers that probably cover 90% plus of the use today in model railroading. On the left is a 58 whiskers coupler. You'll notice that the knuckle and stuff is a little bit smaller. Let's see if I can get this straightened out a little bit here. Then the one on the right, which is a Kadee 14 coupler. Your choices when you're setting up a model railroad that's going to be involved in operations, and I'm going to really say any railroad, model railroad, whether you're going to operate or not, you got to decide which one you're going with. You're going to go with prototype, which is smaller, or you're going to go with the 14 coupler, which is the same size as the old 5 and 10s. Whichever way you go, it's one way or the other. You can't mix them. Okay, yeah, I know. We're going to get a phone call from Kadee says you can. Well, we're going to have people out there that say you can. Well, believe me, experience has told me, and going through enough operating sessions, you can't. They don't really work well together. Get a lot of missed couples. So my suggestion is pick one and go one or the other. Yes, these little things are expensive. In my case, I have a friend who's gone with the 58s. So when I get cars around here that have 58s on them, I take them off, put 14s on them, give him the 58s, and he gives me his 14s or 5s back. So all my cars, I use the one on the right, which is a Kadee 14, and it's the new whiskers coupler. And anything that I get that I do new, that's the way that I go, is with the whiskers coupler. So what does it do? Well, the whiskers coupler replaces this little device right here that we're all familiar with, which was the spring return device in the old 5 and 10. So by using the little whisker coupler, you don't have that piece. Now, this particular railroad, as most of you know, has a few cars on it. In the operating system alone, that's 549 cars. Did I run around and change out all the cars? No, we did not. We just have all 5, 10s, or 14s. Yes, there's a few odds and ends around here, but basically we stick with this type size coupler, which is the original size. Do not use the prototype couplers on this layout. So that's the first decision you need to make if you're going to be operating and so forth. You need to consistently have all your couplers the same. Next, you need a couple of basic tools. The tool at the top, this one right here, is your height gauge. You set this on a piece of track. Then you can run your car up to it and the coupler should match. If it doesn't, then you need to make adjustments. I am not going to get into mounting Kadee couplers on cars, engines, and so forth, and all of the options that you have to make this the right height. I'm just going to say this is it. Just remember this little device right here. One thing about it is it's metal. And when you place it on the track, you created a short. So, you know, we all check cars with the electricity off and so forth. Don't forget you left it there. You got to take it off the track. I hate to tell you how many times it got left on the track and, Jesus, where's the short? You know, I know we've all been there, all done that. So just a reminder, don't forget to get this thing off the track. Now, next tool you got to have is this device. And this is for bending the little trip pin. Okay? Because when you put all these little couplers on all your little cars and you run them over those your track and you've got a couple of grade crossings, first thing you're going to find out is the little trip pin's hanging up, so you got to bend the little trip pin up. You don't want to bend it up any more than necessary, and that's what that device does, because you lay the trip pin around that bent device like so, and then when you squeeze it a little bit, it will bend the tip round and so forth. Do not want to get that little rounded trip tip up any higher than necessary, because it's the part that works with the magnet. And everybody who went around and cut them all off, then you're going to have to replace the coupler to make it work with the magnet. So moving right ahead. Okay, uncoupling magnets. So the ones that primarily I use come in a bag like so. And if you get a real close up of the bag, it's going to say code 100. Interesting. And there's the two types of magnets. The one on the left is the one which, this is the typical magnet that goes in the center of the track, which I use primarily to most of those. And those are code 100 magnets. The next one is the in the cork, in the this magnet used built into the cork or to the homosoap. That's the word I was looking for, homosoap. I'm going to show you that in a minute, and I'll show you the cork. I'll guarantee you, if you put this and this goes, you put this underneath and the track goes over, I will guarantee you when you pass two cars over this with a Kadee magnet coupler, they will come uncoupled. This does cause a little bit of a headache in operations and when you're running trains around, because if you run a train over that magnet right there, i.e. like so, and the train passes over and you have any kind of a slack in the car, your train's going to become uncoupled. So these magnets here, you need, if you use this type of a magnet and it's strong, you need to place it where you really intend for cars to come uncoupled. Now, good way to do that magnet is, if you have the standard issue road cork is like so, and put it right in the device. Now I'll just put this piece of cork on the other side. Now it is sticking up a little bit, so you need to shim everything up, because you can't take the plate off the back. I won't make any comments about that little thing. You got to leave the plate on the back, because that adds the strength to the magnet on a field. Not going to get into a discussion about magnets today, but if you run your fingers here, you would feel a little bit of an edge. So these pieces have to come up, be shimmed and so forth, which could lead you to some humps and things like that. This application with the magnet that you see right in front of you is best done with Homosode. Now I'll get a piece and show you. Okay, so here we have a piece of Homosode that I borrowed. I don't use this. Works good. One thing I gotta say is make sure you get a can of sand sealer if you put this down on your layout. And before you start, spread it all over and let it dry, because it's not totally permeable from water. Okay, so here's your magnet right here. You mark the spot. You cut out the Homosode, assuming there's plywood or something else below the Homosode. You cut out the hole, and then you can put shims underneath the magnet to bring it up so it's level with the top of the Homosode, and then you would run your track directly over where the magnet is. This works extremely well. This is probably the best application. If you have yards and stuff like that, then I would highly recommend those magnets, because as you can see, the thickness of the Homosode will allow you to bury this magnet all the way in it. In actuality, if you can see right there, you have some left over, so you're going to need a shim underneath it to make it flush with the top. Closer the magnet is to the bottom of those little round pins, the more the better it'll work. So this kind of covers that magnet. Let's move on here to these two magnets, where these magnets come in. And you remember I said I use code 100. The reason I use code 100, it's a bigger magnet. But wait a minute, that's a code 83 track. Okay, so you take your code 83 track and you place your magnet here. Take your old handy marks a lot, and you say, okay, there's the last thing, and you mark that tie and that tie. And these ties right here need to be cut. I take a saw and I cut them out. And now I'll cut them out. I'll get the saw and start cutting them out. We'll stop. Won't let you go through that whole process, but I'll show you what happens with these magnets. Note, excuse me, on the edge of the magnet, the slot, what we want to do is stick that down in between the ties. Because that will lower this code 100 magnet down far enough to where it works with the code 83 track. Yes, they do make a code 83 magnet. I have some issues with those. I'm going to let you be the person who plays around with it and you see the issue. But the code 100 magnet is bigger and stronger than the code 83 magnet. So that's why I use them to do the uncoupling with. And if you play around with these long enough, you'll understand all this. Okay. I will take a saw, regular Zona saw, and if you get in here, you want to cut right next to where basically the plastic track spike is. And you want to cut along like this. And you want to cut out the ties to create a hole in the middle here to put this in. Alright, so now we've cut out the center of the ties. Please realize that you will be doing this on track that is laid in. You know exactly where the industry is and where you want the uncoupling ram. This is for demonstration purposes easier. I also went and got another little tool to cut the ties out. You're all familiar with these if you ever built buildings and had to cut plastic off the racks. Works very good to chop ties out too. But you will have put your track down and probably operated, in some of my cases I've gone years. And once I've decided that this is where the industry is going to go and we're going to need to uncouple a car here, or this is where I want the ramp, then I cut the ties. This isn't done beforehand, because once you cut those ties out, you got a very weak and unstable piece of track. And the little ties also, the part that's left will get lost. They'll start coming off. You can't work with this track once you've done this. So get the track in place, operate, and do it with some of the manual techniques, which I'll show you. Then once you get all decided and this is what you want to do, then come back and cut out the ties. So then if you take this with the little ridges showing, you'll notice they now sit. And you got to play with this a little bit. You may have to do some fine tuning. But now they sit, the magnet sits right in the track. And if you see, it's below the heads of the track. And that's what you're looking to accomplish. A code 100 magnet in a piece of code 83 track. Now, so we know this works, then the next step is take the magnet back out. In your bottle of white glue, you come in here and glue it up big time. You fill up glue everywhere so that the plastic track and all that gets thing, and you got some on the edges that the magnet's going to sit on, and then you put the magnet back in place with the glue touching edges, and you'll see it. Make sure it's right and everything's level, and you're ready to go. You come back tomorrow, not today, tomorrow, after it's all dried good, and you're in business. So this is basically my approach to putting the center track magnet in a piece of code 100 magnet in a piece of code 83 track. Now, we'll give you some examples of where this has been done. This is a magnet installation by the cement plant. There's one there on that track, and then there's one here on this track. And this is the operation. So if we want to uncouple cars here, when we come back and forth, we can do it. We don't have to touch the cars. This is one at the grocery supply house. Right here. Now, this is a magnet at the grain elevator. This represents a little bit of a challenge, and this is why I tell you, you don't cut these things in until after you see it all operate. Cars pretty much have to be straight to work correctly for these uncoupling magnets. You can't go put it right here in the curve. It's not going to work. So we had to move it away. Here's one over here for the lumber plant. Now, none of these have been, the track's been ballasted, but this is where it's all going to end up. Here's the two, one leading in here for the, well, that one leads in for Barclay warehouse, and this one leads over here to the Pillsbury plant. There's one on track 1, and then one on track 2, and then we have one for the auto distributor. So someone can come back here and work this whole industrial area, switch the cars out, pick them up, set them out, position them without touching the cars. So now here's one by the Apex Depot, and we've got it in place. The track's been ballasted. Probably need a little grass and some weeds growing around here, but other than that, this is finished. Okay, so we'll do a little manual here, and you want to uncouple your car. That's how it works. Now let's see if we can get a dead push. I'm going to have to get better light. This is not going to work. Huh, we got a dead push on this one. Okay. Alright, so anyway, this gives you an example right here, real quick, of uncoupling your cars. Well, that you wouldn't, if you had an engine on it, it would just open it up and you could leave a car and so forth. I showed you the big magnet that went under the track. There's one right there. I purposely scraped the ballast away so it could be seen. The piece of tie laid on the side of the track and the ballast is for the operator, so they'll know where the magnet is. Because when you have cars over it, they can't see it. So that's one of those big magnets, and we use it here because there's a lot of trains made up out of this yard. And that's kind of the makeup track. It's the branch line, and the operator uses it to pull cars out and shove them there and break pieces apart. That's a great magnet for that purpose. Now, talked about the little sticks. This is in the apex yard. If you pull the cars up, you can't see the magnet. So you have to identify its location. There's a lot of ways you can do this. Just use your imagination. What works for you is great. Whatever works for you is great. So if you want to see the place so that now the car is sitting over it and it uncouples. Now we're going to do, you see, the magnets do not match. The couplers do not match. The magnet is keeping the knuckles open. So I can come here with this car like this, push this back, stop, pull this car forward, and that car stays where it is. That's called the dead push. So if I go back, there's no magnet, they couple up. Okay? That's how the Kadee system works. Right there. That's called the dead push. Okay? Just that simple. Now, it keeps everybody's little hands and fingers and stuff off the track. Now, you can't put these magnets out on the main line. You will have problems. That's one of the issues with the magnets. Like I said, if you hesitate, train jumps or jerks, when it's over, cars are over a magnet, they'll become uncoupled. So again, cars sitting over the magnet, even a tank car where you can see down the sides, you can't really see the magnet clearly as an operator. So you have to do something to identify it. I just took, those were actually switch ties that I had left over from one point or another and just laid them there next to the magnet so the operator knows where the magnet is to stop and bump the car to break them loose. So this is a yard and you can work all those cars. Now, the next thing is getting the couplers to work. Kadee couplers. This is a story that's got a never-ending end. I don't know. It could go on for hours. We're not going to get into this aspect of putting Kadee couplers on every possibility in the world. Like I said in the beginning, about 90% of what you got will work with either 58 or 14 couplers today. So we'll just leave it at that. This is a box that I inherited from a friend, and somebody will get it from me someday. But it's got most of the different types of couplers that Kadee makes. And this is probably the thing, get them out, someplace to keep them and so forth, in some way to identify where they are. So you need one that's a little bit longer, a little shorter, a little higher, a little bit lower, whatever. I think Kadee's made just about everything. I did come up with a situation recently that they didn't have a replacement coupler, and I even called and talked to them about it, and they said they weren't going to do it because they convinced the manufacturer they needed to put a different kind of coupler on the end of the car. So there you have it. Okay, so let's talk about making your Kadee couplers work. If they don't spring back and forth freely, when you go one way, if they don't center like this, you got an issue, and you're going to have to work on it. Inside the slot where they go, you need to make sure they're clean. There's no little burr sticking out that's going to hang them up. Now this is a K14. It's called the Whiskers coupler. So you don't have the little brass plate in there. I lied. It's not. That's a 14. This is a 5, an older car. I'm sorry. You can just see the brass plate in there if you look. But no matter which way it is, you just got to make sure that it's working. If it's the old ones with the brass plate or the Whiskers, whichever one. If it doesn't spring back and forth and center, it's not going to work. Next thing is knuckles got to open and close. Okay? Freely. If the spring right there is missing, you got to replace it. And there's a little tool that Kadee sells to put the spring on to get it in there that makes life a lot simpler. The other thing you can do it with is a number 11 X-Acto blade, an X-Acto knife. Put the spring on the blade and it kind of works. But the Kadee tool is the easiest thing. Okay, you cannot put oil on a Kadee coupler. Oh, but it'll make it work better. No, it'll cause you problems in the long run. The only thing you can put in that slot right there that will help with a Kadee coupler is graphite. Do not use oil, because the oil will attract the dirt and actually the situation gets worse. Graphite's the only thing I've ever used in the box. But if you get the boxes working right and all the springs and all the parts are there, things. Also, PAVE helps if you put weights in your car that don't roll around. Okay. Gonna have to fix that. Cars all have extra weight in them. Put about 2 or 3 ounces more in them. Sorry. I heard it roll, come loose. So it's another case of stick-on weights. It should have put some glue on them. So key points on the couplers, make sure they work. If your couplers are not working correctly, then they won't uncouple correctly. Okay. Other ways to uncouple cars without using magnets in the bottom of the track. For people who goes to operating sessions, this is a skewer stick. Nice little point on the end of the stick. You buy them at the grocery store for making shish kebabs. Smaller they are, with the smaller the point, the better off you are. So you stick them down in here, and you get right in between the two couplers. Get some slack on the car, and I'm kind of, there you go, and it'll come apart. One way to do it. Another way to do it is if you have two cars together and you get the trip pin pulled over, it'll come apart. Now that gets a little more wear and tear on the cars. Heavy operating layouts, when they stick the stick down in like this, they miss, boom, catch a spring, and you got to fix the springs. Another way to do it, this is a piece of plastic that has 2 magnets on it. I believe this is made by Kadee, I think. And you stick it in here and it will uncouple the cars. Got to get it centered. If it's not exactly centered, it doesn't work real well. It's another one of those little things that practice makes perfect. But again, these two cars couplers work extremely well. They happen to be Kadee cars, but won't get into that. But that's a key to the whole thing. The couplers really have to work right on the cars before all the rest of this system works completely. So that's a couple of things you can use in demonstrations of ways to get your cars undone. The other thing is you're going to have a lot of guest operators. If you have to, start the session off with a class on how to uncouple cars. Don't assume that everybody knows how to do this stuff, particularly if you get into operations. So I'm going to move on to something else here. So we showed you these uncoupling ramps right here, and I'm looking down, and those ramps are sitting on the 40-inch level of the layout. So what do you do when you're here? 60 inches. This is where those little ramps come in real handy. You just got to identify where they are. So the little white post is in the middle of the uncoupling ramp. So let's assume fingers engine. We pull car up. Bingo. Pull cars up. Bingo. I hope everybody sees how much wear and tear you could save on your little cars on doing this. So this is a yard. It's got 3 tracks in it. There's one. I'm going to move this back a little bit. 2, 3 couplers. Uncoupling ramps. Those are little plastic mile marker signs I found. I'm looking for one that's got a number showing. See, it says 17. So, if you see the little plastic thing sticking up on my railroad, and you're an operator here, at this level, you know that's an uncoupling ramp. So, we're at the 60-inch level again. This is the other end of that yard that we were just looking at, and there's 3 ramps here. Now, it does get a little interesting here on the reverse side because we don't know where the uncouplers are. Okay, can't see the one because the switches are staggered the other way. But they're there. And the operators eventually figure out, well, they can look underneath the cars and catch them. One exception, you get all the way to the back, it gets a little tough. So right now the white push pin marks where the coupler is, the uncoupling ramp. Probably come up with something a little bit different than the white push pin eventually here. But that's just another example of you can identify where your ramps are, and it prevents people from having to try to figure things out. And I kind of try to give you a little perspective here. That's the 40-inch level, and then we're coming up here. And I'm holding this camera right at, I'm 5'10", 5'11". So, I'm holding right at eyesight level. So this is what I see. Now, you're operating up here, and you got a service in the back. Okay, I'll just say my belly button is currently leaning up against the fascia on a 40-inch level, and it's 30 inches from the wall. So that gets to be a little bit of a reach to service XYZ cycling. But if you have your engines and your car is all working, I don't have to go back there and touch anything. Because you see the little white post? There's my own coupling ramp. Right there. And believe me, you can do it all without ever reaching up there to get anything. You can service all those cars, and you can dead push the ones to the next industry. Now, that's an example of effective use, particularly in places that may be a little more difficult to reach. Okay, we stood up on something so we could be taller, so you can see this on the ramp. So here we have, that's 18 inches deep there to the edge right there. And then if you come back out, this is 30 inches to this edge. So, whereas 30 inches in the reach, but for somebody who's 5'5", 5'6", one, they're going to be seeing it like this, okay, and they're going to have difficulty. Yes, you can get the step stool on, stand up on it, and see it if you want to. Just trying to make things as easy as we can. See another one down there. For the Arrowhead Ale Company. Arrowhead Ale must be getting bottles or something or shipping out today. So I think it's been shipping out now for 2 months. Oh, we need to run a session and move them cars. So anyway, this covers it, on ways to save your cars, uncouple cars during an operating session. Because you're going to beat your little cars to death if you keep handling them. Okay, so this is a little demonstration if you're an operator and you're building a train and you have a manifest in front of you and you need to pull cars. And on the JMRI operating system that I have, if you were building the train for the Apex Silverville branch line run that stops at Apex Industrial and services the industries, you'd have a list of cars you had to pull, and it probably would have said something to the fact that go to track 4 and pull X number of cars, and let's say the first car we need is the Denver Rio Grande high cube box car ending with the numbers 20, which is the second car. So we pull it up and we uncouple it from the string of cars in the yard, and we're building our train back there on the branch line track, and we pull forward, throw the switch, and we back the car back up over the uncoupling ramp. Now, where you go, dropped it off. And we're going to go put this car back in the yard. Now, in all reality, we probably would have pulled the whole string of cars and had 3 or 4 cars to dig out of that string of cars off of that track, but since we're just demoing today, we'll cut the procedure short. Okay, there you go. Couplers do work best if you take the slack off of them, as you saw me do there a little bit by pushing back and creating the slack, and then they spring open real easy. So that's a demonstration of what you're trying to achieve. No hands. Makes life a lot simpler. Particularly when you're dealing with a yard like this where you're going to be in a typical session. This person may handle as much as 200 cars. So that's a lot of hands touching cars. And for all of us who play with these things long enough know, the more you touch them, the more they break. And they are toys, and it's just a reality of the fact of the matter. So hope everybody's enjoyed the video. Little passing comment, we've now passed 4,000 subscribers, so thanks to all. By far and away the majority of you all are here because of the trains, a few because of some of the cruise videos. I know not very many, but thanks for subscribing and watching. We're running up on 900,000 views. Never in the wildest dreams ever thought we'd get to this point in life. And right now what is happening is, because of the number of people and the interest that YouTube has generated in the hobby, the view number is jumping exponentially. It goes up at a much faster rate now with all the people watching. So again, thanks.